Good evening or afternoon, depending on where you're at. Welcome to another awesome episode of Victory Never Sleeps. Today, we are sort of launching my fifth Wednesday series, taking Spekingr Brandy Facet's spot on that. Uh, Today, we have a special guest who I don't think has been on the program before. Uh, One of our very best folk builders, Gothi student, fellow Supreme Anglo-Saxon, Ron Boardman, and I will have questions and such for him in a moment. But first, do some of our usual top of the show stuff. We are still paying off Phrasehoff. We've done excellent so far. We're already almost halfway there in less than a year since we even started the purchasing um, process. So 45.4%, not bad at all. We are also still building up for the pavilion at Sigerheim, which will be used to make the weather and the kind of climate there a little more bearable in the hotter months. Tennessee is very humid if you haven't been down south. Let's see. Other stuff. The ladies' retreat at Odenshoff, September 11th through 13th. There will be meditative workshops, ladies' empowerment, frith weaving, etc. It's young ladies 13 and up who will actively participate, encouraged to join. You can still get your tickets at runestone.org/store. That will be exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing. As far as top of the show stuff, please share on YouTube, Twitter, Rumble, etc., etc. As the old Saragothi always says, the biggest reason that our numbers are not much higher than they are is because most people simply don't know we exist. We find that often when people do find us and become enthusiastic members, it was oftentimes their first time hearing of the AFA. Go over some donations we got in. Jeffrey in Texas donated $25 to both Phrasehoff and the pavilion at Sigerheim. No, excuse me, the Baldershoff steeple and pavilion at Sigerheim. Nick left me a typo in the side chat here. It's his fault. Robert donated $10 to the Sigerheim pavilion. And my good kinsman Gilbert Page donated $150 to Phrasehoff. Thank you all, gentlemen. I know with the economy the way it is, it's tough to, spare any extra shekels, but we really appreciate it, and it's going towards good works. Anybody who's been to any of our hoffs or any of our events can vouch for that. Okay. So to start, I guess, let me see. I have a list of interview type questions for you, Ron. I have them typed up on my phone so I don't forget any. If you don't mind starting off just kind of telling us about yourself generally, just for those that don't know you.
Generally, well, in that vein, you guys, well, I live in New Hampshire. I'm originally from Massachusetts, north of Boston on the ocean. And, oh, geez, I was Boy Scout, normal family, Boy Scout, love Scouts, love that sort of thing. And the out of doors, grew up outside. Like many of us grew up watching some of the old, well, maybe not like some of the younger guys, but I'm sure many of us still grew up watching, Robin Hood, Errol Flynn, Moby Dick, all these, Spartacus, all these, Mutiny on the Bounty, all these very heroic movies they used to make about our people. And it had an eager audience because it was our people and we were into our ancestors back then. Way more so than you think of now. We weren't demonized. So I grew up with that background and, and military family too. Not that we were traveling military like lifers, but, my father did a stint. uncles did a stint, Civil War, Revolution, fighting Indians and the Narragansett Indians. So we've got a long line of military in our family. So all these things kind of was my backdrop in life, heroic tales, that sort of thing. So when as I grew and got older, we didn't have the internet. Old guy statement, right? But we didn't have the internet, so we would thumb through encyclopedias and dictionaries, and you go to the library and you look stuff up in the library, and like the Allfather says, word leads to word, deed leads to deed, and you start bumping into things, and I got a challenge for you guys. I'd love you guys to keep track of how many times I say I try not to say it, but I say it a lot. So I'd love to hear at the end how many times I actually said So, but my town was called Nahant. It's off of Lynn, Salem. It's right on the ocean. And it was right on the bicentennial of America. And they would, a lot of history. There was Indian history in town, fighting the Indians in town. But there was also something, the sea serpent that was, from Gloucester to Boston, was seen all summer in the late 1800s. But one of the things was they were talking about Leif the Lucky, because one of his stories in the Villain Saga, they talk about there was like a headland of a Cape headland and sandy beaches, which could apply to most of New England, right? But our town they used to like to say, oh, well, he was in the hunt. So all these things come together, and like I was saying earlier, set the backdrop. And as you get older, and encyclopedias, and what's this? Oh, what's runes? Oh, runes. What's that? Oh, so I learned how to write Ronnie. Everyone called me Ronnie growing up. I learned how to write Ronnie in runes, and I still have a powder horn that I bought at Gettysburg, and I wrote Ronnie on it. And so I'm probably 12, 13. Like a lot of us do those types of things, and then as the years go on, these sorts of things build up. And when I was in the infantry, I met a dude who was just generic pagan, right? And I never knew such a thing had still existed. And he and I would talk a lot. And again, it was generic European pagan, and it wasn't Asatru, but we talked about Odin and Thor and heritage to an extent, and that's really where I was exposed to different people of different backgrounds that we didn't grow up seeing in New England back in the day, and so these things come together, and I remember we were talking about Beowulf, because I was asking him. I thought he was like a guy knew it all. I was asking him about who are these heathen gods they worshipped in Beowulf, but he did have an idea that they were the Germanic gods, Thor and such. And so those are the things that really come together, and didn't really do much with it. He got out of the service, I got out of the service, we did our things, and years later, again, like I told you, I grew up near Salem, Mass, and there's a generic pagan, Wiccan mostly, but you'd see flyers and that sort of thing. And one of the flyers, it was advertising thing, was a local kindred. And this was probably the mid to late 90s. Yeah, mid 90s. And so I went and I saw something on AOL at the time. Sorry, but AOL at the time about the same group. And I wound up going to meet these guys. And also I read some books in the mid 90s, early to mid 90s about Asatru as well. And, including Thorson's, but also, it's kind of embarrassing. Well, I shouldn't say embarrassing, but a guy by the name of Kveldolf Gunderson, that was his pen name. And I read one of his books, and I got a lot out of it at the time. But be that as it may, and I met these other people, and I started hanging out with them. I was like, Asatru, cool, but we were all younger, and they were kids too, and there wasn't wokeism back then. But the big thing in 1998, I went to a Yule bloat, and I met a beautiful brunette who I wound up marrying, and so so there's that, and then started getting more into the Anglo-Saxon side of the house with the Wodenings, Swain Wodening, and Brian Smith, an old good friend down in Maryland, and I stayed in that world for a very, very long time. But we would still rub elbows with regular Asatru, I'll say, like just people on the street. But come the mid-teens, and I don't know if this is where you wanted me to go with this, but come the mid-teens, Asatru, like the rest of the world, started really getting different. A lot of people who were just generally on the left side of the house, which was fine. They really started going ballistic, and they were importing alphabet people everywhere into their groups. Like that was a thing. You had to have some, and to me that was just ridiculous, and back in the day, there's always been a Universalist Folkish split in Asatru, but it functionally didn't really exist because there really wasn't those people to make it be split. We're all European men and women. But then come the mid-teens, early to mid-teen, I'd say early teens-ish, you started seeing that import coming in, and it really changed the character of Asatru. And so, I became more insular with just the Anglo-Saxon folks, and due to internal issues with personalities and that sort of thing, like a lot of things, things just go their own way, separate way. And so me and the wife spent a little more time with the broader Asatru guys in New England, and then that got worse and worse, and we saw them less and less, and we've been hosting stuff forever, so we dialed back on hosting things, and then COVID kind of sealed the deal. So we were kind of ourselves for a few years. And once in a while, we'd have people over for the holidays, but it was nothing like we used to do. We used to have scores of people here in the regular, and so then we were lonely. We missed out people, and the world changed even more, and we became more insular in the sense of wanting to be around our own people. And I tried to fill that role to some extent with being active in the Veteran of Foreign Wars, the American Legion. I did some Civil War reenacting, and I did Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War, those types of fraternal veteran groups, and nice guys, but I was always the youngest old guy, and all they'd want to talk about is their glory days and when they were 21 years old and did whatever. And it didn't, there go my dogs. But it didn't suit me. It didn't suit Lily. It just wasn't there. So then, and we've always known about the Asatru Folk Assembly, always. But we never joined because in our eyes, that was more of a West Coast thing at the time. And plus I was very active in the Anglo-Saxon world, the fairish world. But so we didn't really think much of it. We had friends who were in it, but they all wound up leaving due to their concerns with the AFA being more clearly succinct in the language on that we are folkish. I guess at one time there was a lot more, not wishy-washy. There was people who didn't really understand that we were folkish, and so anyways, but we never thought of the AFA. We never thought of it, and then one day Lily said, "I wonder if we should check out the AFA," and I was like, "Music to my ears, let's do it." And we saw a photograph of a moot. It was like an axe throwing. It was some of the main guys at the time come over to New Hampshire, and it's like holy mackerel. There are AFA guys in not just New England but in New Hampshire. We've got to check this out. And then I think we corresponded with somebody wanting to come to a moot, and they said we ought to join to come to the moot, and we said okay. and we did, and it was probably one of the best decisions we've ever made in our life, to join the AFA. And we joined. We met the people, and fantastic individuals, men, women, children, just regular people that I could similar worldview, religious wise, political wise, social wise, all these things into their heritage, and by looking at these, even though now I'm actually the oldest old guy instead of the youngest old guy, but when you look at these men and women, like pious, I could see myself. It wasn't like showing up at like some, and this isn't bashing anybody, but it's not showing up and expecting to see people in all you see is like leather and spiky hair and piercings. There was none of that. It was like regular dudes and dudettes, and I wore my hat to the first one because that's my dress hat anyways. I've worn this type of thing forever as my dress hat. And it was all she wrote. It was all she wrote. And me and Lily were incredibly happy, and we started hosting things again like we did in the old days. And it was just probably the best decision we made. Is I love our people, I love our folk, and I love the ACER. And being in the Asatru Folk Assembly, especially as a folk builder, that marries the two together, in my view. So I'm serving our folk who I love, and our holy ACER who I really love. So it's one of the best things for me, and we just love it. And Lily's so happy, and it's just been good for we weren't in a bad relationship, but it amplifies our relationship, because the thing that initially brought us together, our worship of the ACER, and beautiful brunette too, but our worship of the ACER, being that binding thing is been able to flourish again. And when I feel, and I could probably demonstrably say it's true, that we are making a difference in our folks' life. Maybe not on a grand scale, hopefully one day, but at least on a local level, and that contribution at the local level helps the bigger level of the Church of the ACR on Midgard. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. There's probably more I could tell, but you guys probably heard all you need to hear about that for now.
All right. Thank you for sharing all that. You kind of answered my first and second question there, which is cool. And that reminded me, you mentioned making a difference in the world. The Alsherigothi is, or was, I don't know if it's still going on, but he had an interview with Mark Collette of Patriotic Alternative over in the United Kingdom. I believe that's on Rumble. If someone wants to post the link to that in the live stream chat, that'd be cool. So our folk can get it, and also so I can get it, because I'm not super tech savvy and have never used Rumble once. So I heard he did a great job, or is doing a great job.
Good interview.
Okay,
really good interview. It was Mark's a pretty well-spoken dude, and Alsherigothi was, as always, well-spoken and very cordial, very friendly, and very receptive. I'd love to see them on again. It was a very just informative, just interesting.
Yeah, I like that someone with that big of an audience was able to have the Alsherigothi on. I'd love to see him get an interview with Thomas Sewell in Australia as well. Kind of get all the Anglosphere together, worshiping the ICER. But yeah, we've already had a couple of British people, shoot us emails asking about if they can visit the U.S. to come see a Hoff and whatnot. We have somebody probably come to Praise Hoff in the next few months, which
good.
Would be great.
We just had one of our members from Sweden come over. Right. Was it for Midsummer? He was over the Hoff for Midsummer.
Yeah.
So I mean, the bloatfirth, the term you scared up is a thing, And no, it's a great term. I love it. I don't think enough of us use that term. It's two words, bloat. We all know what bloat is, and firth, like going forth. And it's yeah, it's going to somewhere holy or special for a holy day or a holy event and a blowford. Like I hate to make Christian comparisons, but pilgrimage. It's a
Yeah.
pilgrim, and it really is. And blowford is a really good term, and I don't think enough of us use it.
Let me see. So my next question I had for you, as a fellow proud Saxon, what thoughts, if any, do you have on theodism? I ask because a lot of people in the AFA, specifically a decent number of our clergy, past and present, have had interactions with them, some positive, some negative, but mostly they seem to, they'll leave it because they prefer the AFA, which I'm certainly not going to get upset at them for, but they always seem to have gotten something from it. And with you having mentioned that, you were especially involved in the Anglo-Saxon side of things, I was just curious what your unbiased take is on theodism. What do they do right? What do they do wrong, etc.?
Well, there's some good people in theodism that I wish I had maintained contact with. Theodism is typically seen as Anglo-Saxon, but it's not specifically. They're at one time, I don't keep in touch anymore, but at one time there was a Frisian theod. There's a guy who was doing like a Saxon, continental Saxon theod, but I think he jumped ship and changed it around to Anglo-Saxon. There's a guy in New York. I won't even mention his name, complete loser, but he was pretty big for a time, and he practiced a Norman version, a Normandy, the Danes and land of Normandy. He practiced that, and they're all, you could say, because my theod that I was a part of, you could say I'm a failed theodsman because it didn't work out. Part my fault, part other guy's fault, but I accept that, that's just the way it is. So, but with that as a backdrop, the good thing about theodism is it was very scholarly, but not scholarly where you don't practice. I used to call theodism orthodox Asatru, very, very, this is in the law. This is everything that we do is in the law somewhere. If it's not in the law, you wouldn't see it as much. And I like that quite a bit. There's a lot of scholarly work in passing on that information. One of the downsides, I think in Asatru in general, there's that information that is out there is often passed mouth to ear. And while there's some excellent material, like the founder's book on Asatru, the Spear, Al-Shagodi put together the True Logs Mile, while there's some excellent resources there, that's still, in my mind, relatively small compared to what I would like to see out there. And theodism did that too. I mean, there's the Wodenings, Swain and Eric, Barry and Terry Canute. They put together a number of books, smaller publicized books, and you can still find them out there. And those are really good. And when I was a theodsman, as I said earlier, there'd be a lot of just generic Asatru guys come. There was a big thing in Texas. I can't remember what it was called. There's a big thing in Texas years ago, and so many people came. And I'd probably say like at least a third of them were just generic Asatru. Steve Pollington come down. He was a guest there. He got flown in. I shouldn't say we. I was a member. So he got flown in, but hope you guys are counting the ums. So anyways, so a lot of that knowledge was that scholarly knowledge, and don't for a second take it that Asatru in general isn't scholarly. I'm not saying that. there's a lot of minutia that the theosmen would dig up. So a lot of people would come to those things and be around it. And I think generic Asatru who came were bettered by it, because you'd be able to learn a lot more of the law, which would inform your practice today. But I think that was also I'm trying to be careful because, other people may have different ideas. I'm trying not to irk old friends if they're watching. But I think also that minutia also kind of hamstrung us to be stuck in a time and place, as opposed to being what we like to call, forward-facing Asatru. While I personally think it's good broadly, all right? This is Ron talking. This isn't AFA talking, but I think it's good to do something the way our ancient Asatru ancestors did it, or try to do it, because then you are, at that point, now you are informed on what it was like, but you're also a modern man or woman. You can take that and with real knowledge, because you did it, apply it to today, right? So yeah, and I it seems like, and there was personalities at the time. That was one of the downfalls with theism in my mind, is there's a lot of oaths there was an oath everywhere. And while the web of oaths sounds like a good idea, and it is, I think, still fantastic for leadership, for people who are leading and holding office within an organization, a church, I still think that's a good idea. But when you got a new guy coming in and he's got an oath to another guy, and they get all these web of oaths get dirty, and it gets sticky, and it can turn ugly, because now this person, this group is enemies with this person, this group, but you have oaths that merge together somewhere, and it's like, what do I do with this? But the piousness and seriousness of the people that I knew in theism were there. They were like us. We are pious and we are serious in what we're doing. We're not playing around. We like to laugh and joke. We embrace life, but we're not playing around. So, but I think a lot of that kind of, and there were, how a small world can be. Some people get in there and they want to control others, and so there were some people who weren't doing it for the right reasons, and it hurt the greater because everybody was bound by oaths. And again, for leadership, it's important that we have oaths, and it's important that we have the all shall go, the being the top dog, and his word is the final word. That's very important. The buck stops here. That's very important, and that's one of the things I love about the AFA. There is a man accountable, and I might cry about something, but in the end, my boss, one of the Gold R or Spekingr or all shall go, they says, no, this is not what we want to do. We want to do it this way, and that's it. It doesn't foster a bickering attitude by, well, actually, we don't have that, because we have clearly defined order, which is good, because that's natural, and that order is natural. So yeah, we did swine blow it another number of times here for midsummer, and that was fantastic and holy and very special. And yeah, so that was a good in theism. Learned a lot. Like Sumbel, Githya Erickson, Huff Githya Erickson, she can tell you of 150 people in High Sumbel. 150 people in High Sumbel with I think we call them male wenches, but a serving lady, passing around a horn, or they can go all night long, but that's a lot of people. And yeah, I learned a lot. There's a lot of good out of it. But I do want to say one more thing about theaters. Some of the guys like to bust on LARPers for theaterism. In for the overwhelming majority of us, that definitely wasn't the case. And they'll point to garb, tunics, and some guys can go a little far with hats and stuff that kind of a Robin Hood hat or I've heard the Smurf hat, a Phrygian cap, and I get it, but the reason, look at us now, you and I, sir, right? We're dressed. I think we're dressed well, we're like sharp, but we're modern men, and we're showing our devotion, a seriousness of what we're talking about, what we're doing by dressing sharp. Well, we used to call that waifed sharp. Sharp is like looking sharp, but waifed is like an altar, right? So you dress sharp for the altar, and wearing the tunics and a scram of sacks on your hip and a cloak and stuff. It some people felt it was LARP even back then, but the idea was a pietis. It's like wearing lederhosen to a Oktoberfest, that sort of thing. So it was taken very seriously. It was a way of looking sharp and trying to get in touch with our ancestors. And so I did want to say that about Theodism, and that people like to hurl stones about that, and I guess some of it could be legitimate with some people, but in general, we're trying to look nice. And to be fair, most Asatru, or many Asatru, did that back in the day too.
Yeah, I mean, there's we did the episode of VNS where Chris Savage kind of led us through the AFA's history in a slideshow, and there were plenty of times in the early free assembly and folk assembly days you'd have guys dressed up like full-on Vikings. As far as Theodism goes, literally all of the people I've met in person that came from Theodism were all pious, devoted individuals. And incidentally, all of those people are still in the AFA, either current or former leaders, but even the former leaders in a great way. I guess my message as far as Theodism would be, obviously I'm going to say you should join the AFA, get your whole Theod and bring them in as a kindred or just as a group. You don't have to remain a kindred if you don't want to, etc. You could be a folk builder for us, and you could, your personal practice can be based in Anglo-Saxon history. You won't find you won't find two men more proud of their Anglo-Saxon heritage than the two of us on the screen right now. I would put money on it, so I definitely understand wanting to do the Theodism thing. I saw some pictures of it on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, one of those junk sites, when I was 19 or 20 and gotten into Asatru, and I part of me really considered like, man, I want to go do that. Specific ancestors did at least something like that. And of course, you take a step back and look at a wider view of history, and it's, the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings, etc., are all the same people, and it's kind of different subcultures. But yeah, I've never had anybody in the AFA as a former Theodsman or Theodswoman, whatever the proper term is. They all left that and came here for a reason, but they all had largely good things to say about Theodism. And, like I said, I'm certainly going to be Team AFA all the way, but I don't fault anybody for having gone to Theodism first. And it may look a little LARPy or whatever, but I think pretty much everybody that gets into ancestral faith does a little bit of LARPing to an extent, or at least likes the idea of it or thinks it looks cool or whatever. I couldn't afford one of those fancy tunics myself, or I probably would have at one point, but I definitely admired the hell out of them.
But I think the big reason why, if you have been Theodish before and are kind of floating around, or if you're currently Theodish at the moment and not really feeling it, you ought to come over. And the reason I say that is one of the good things about Theodism at the time was like I said, the knowledge, the scholarly knowledge. You can learn a lot. However, in my mind, by delving so deep into it, you can become siloed into into it. While the AFA, we take that knowledge and we learn that knowledge, and there's a lot of knowledge here, but it's used to inform today, right? And there's a distinction. There's a line where I'm not trying to say the salesmen live in the past. I'm not saying that at all. But in saying that, you can get siloed, while the Asatru Folk Assembly, you can still gain that level of knowledge, right? If you seek it, you can find it. But also you're living today in the relationships you build with people today tends to go more beyond church day, right? The AFA, one of the guys about 10 minutes away, his daughter had a birthday, right? She knows one of the other guys, Folkbuilder Tyler Saget. He's up in Keene, right? Real close friend of mine too. They have kids about the same age. Well, we went to the birthday. I went to show my face at the birthday. One of the guys from farther up north come down. He's got kids about the same age. We all come down for the birthday. So, and it was an AFA event only because it was AFA members there doing it, So I'm not saying that can't or doesn't happen in theorism, but that happens a lot more in the Asatru Folk Assembly, because we are so forward facing and we are so forward facing. So you build these real world relationships a lot better with people. And there's also a lot more of us around too. And so it's easy to build these relationships with a lot more people. And I know if go off the road in the middle of the night in January, in the snowbank, I can call up Tyler or one of the other boys who are nearby, and they'll come get me. I know it. We've driven each other to the hospital for hospital visits. It's like, all right, I'll take the day off. I'll drive you down 2 hours down towards Boston, the hospital. Guys do that. Drive people to the airport. Guys do that. Someone doesn't live nearby, but they never get to come out, but they want to come out for a bloat. Guys have gone and gotten that person, that gone out of their way to get that person. So I'm not saying that doesn't happen in theorism, but it doesn't happen on the scale that it does in the Asatru Folk Assembly. I see that all the time, not just New England, but I hear guys down in your neck of the woods, sir, in Georgia. I hear that I'll pick up at the airport. People doing, I'll go back and pick someone else up. It happens all the time. And so, yeah, that's another, just even though it's more mundane and secularish sounding, but being together with our people is in itself I won't say ritual, but it's kind of a ritual itself, being with our own people.
Yeah.
So it's all these things.
Yeah. And at these little, more secular, I guess, as you said, gatherings, it's not, we don't spend the whole time just discussing the ICER and the cosmology or whatever. Gothi Mayo and I, he lives relatively nearby. Whenever we get together, for example, we have the classic argument of is Metallica or Megadeth better? The answer is Metallica in the 80s, Megadeth from then on, by the way. But, we'll have just silly little discussions like that, or we'll complain about the cost of fixing a radiator on a car or whatever. And it's just silly little mundane stuff, but those things do build connections. Not as much as standing in one of the old Gothi's, bloat with somebody, but it adds to it. It adds an extra layer. It's kind of like you said with your wife, you see fellow with a pretty brunette, and I've done the same thing.
Yeah.
Great. The, having the ICER and your relationship with them as an added layer of foundation to that really is kind of the glue that holds it all together.
Yeah.
And it just makes the mundane stuff that much more rewarding, because you can say, with this guy who's arguing with me about Metallica and is wrong, Bodie, he's a good guy, and I've connected with him on this deep level, and we share the same gods and all this, that, and the other.
It's funny about Gothi Mayo. I lightly knew him through the internet 25 years ago. I think probably in the early 2000s, very early. I think we frequented some of the same online spaces. So it's kind of funny when I want to come coming over to the AFA and hitching my wagon. It's like, hey, I know that name. And Mary, a few other people that I'm like, I know that name from years ago. And,
Yeah,
yeah. And I've noticed I noticed another couple of Anglo-Saxon types that I knew back in the day. It's like, oh, I know you. So there's a lot of people vote with their feet, right? If something's good or something bad, they vote with their feet. They're going to go to what's good. And people vote with their feet. And that's why you see so many people come here of different backgrounds. People have been around a little bit, people who haven't been around. So it's definitely the place to be.
absolutely. One other thing I wanted to point out about Ron, to brag on him a little bit, I just remembered, is in Stephen Pollington's book Elder Gods, which the Altair Gothi plugs often. So the law speaker is mentioned in there in either the foreword or the preface. Another staunch Anglo-Saxon man, but Ron Boardman, I pointed the wrong way, excuse me. Ron Boardman is also mentioned in there. So that's pretty cool. I didn't notice that until I think after we had met in person at Ostra a few years ago, and I dug up my copy and I was just reading through it again, and I was like, oh, it's crazy that Law Speaker Turn's name is in there, and I saw yours and I went, wait, whoa.
Yeah.
So, small
I
world.
remember that. We had to have Ron going around making signatures, and he had like his own little book signing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So I things pop in my head randomly. I'm not a detail guy too often. I'm more of a broad brush theme kind of guy. But the Asatru Folk Assembly, we cleave the Old Norse as our language we use for officially. I want to say liturgical, but I can't pronounce it. I can picture it in my head, but I can't pronounce it. That's our liturgy, right? It's Old Norse. And the reason why we do that is for harmony, because we have Anglo-Saxons, we have Continental Saxons, we have Danes, we have Swedes, and we use that to harmonize, to make sure we're all on the same sheet of music. And we chose Old Norse because, in general, that's where our oldest extant sources are that we use to inform our worship and our behavior. And that's not very different, right? We used to say Witten for advisors to the Alshagodi, and Witten is just the king's counselors, and we go for Spekingr now, and Spekingr is the Old Norse equivalent, and it has connotations of speaking, advising the king, and we use that to advise the Alshagodi, right? The Alshagodi, the king, has the final word, but the Spekingr, wise men and women advise, like the Witten, but we jump to Spekingr, right? So Theodism, we use those old terms. We didn't say midsummer. Well, we did, in general conversation, but we'd say Litha. We wouldn't say Freyfax. We would say Leifmas, Lofmas, Lamas. So some of these traits we had in the old Theodish days that I enjoyed so much, we do as well in the AFA. We try to use accurate language, accurate behaviors. We're constantly refining. Bloat. I'm not saying we're changing it all the time. It's very different than saying refining. We'll find details that what can we do better? What can we make it more accurate? What can we make it more pleasing to the Aesir in enacting the gift cycle? Those sorts of things. So if you're a guy who's got that type of background, you're going to see a similar mindset in the Asatru Folk Assembly as well, where we're trying to get it right, trying to be accurate. And the most obvious thing I would say the most obvious thing is the naming convention, using Old Norse instead of winter findings here, harvest here, house bloat there. We harmonize it, and we're trying to do it right and trying to be more accurate. And we've been spelling it wrong the whole time. Let's fix it. So that's that constant refining I mentioned. And so yeah, if you're listening and you're a serious-minded guy, and you're not going to find any more serious-minded Asatru than you will in the Asatru Folk Assembly. Anywhere else you go, they're going to be guys. They may be doing their best and trying hard, but they're not going to be up to speed, or they're doing it for the wrong reason, or yeah, come see us, come visit us. You'll like us. A lot of good people.
And if you do find very serious, devoted Asatru that aren't here, it's likely they don't know we exist or they haven't given us a chance. So you come over here and you bring them with you. So something I saw in the chat that I just wanted to speak on is someone mentioned they didn't like Jackson Crawford's translation of the Havamal because it sounds too American, if I read that right. And I kind of get what you mean. So first, he's not Asatru, and he thinks it's kind of silly superstition, and he has a right to think that. You can assume what issues I would take with his stance on it, right? But beyond that, yeah, I think it's the Havamal specifically, that he has a version it's called like the Cowboys Havamal or something. The novelty of it sounds cool, but once you start reading it, I don't know. And the translations, as far as I can tell, aren't wrong per se, but they lose a lot of the beauty to them. And if you want to hear an American just paraphrase a Havamal stanza to you and not have it sound as nice, I'm right here. You can email me. I'll do that all day. I've done it on here plenty of times. I'll probably do it later in this episode. That's so, yeah, just so you know, if whoever it was that said that, I forget the name of the user, but you're not alone in that. He sounds a little too, I guess, casual to me. It's not, I like the poetry of how our texts are written. Let me pull up.
Oh no, because people often conflate the two. I actually think the Cowboy Havamal is awesome. It's hilarious. It's funny, but it's not his. That's not his translation of the Havamal. He has his translation, and it's completely without soul, without any merit or poeticness. The Cowboy Havamal he specifically wrote to be different. It's the cowboy version, not his translation.
Okay.
He did write the translation too. Cowboy one's just funny. But yeah, his actual translation, though, it sucks. It's completely without soul.
All right, fair enough.
That's one of the things. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I say that's one of the things about related to this conversation. The thing about translations, French to English today, but especially old translations. You want to read the Song of Roland or Beowulf or the Havamal or the Viking Saga, all these things that are, the Aeneid, all these things, when you try to translate those ancient languages into a modern language, be it English, German, Italian, whatever, you're going to sacrifice, you can't help but sacrifice one of two things in the translation. You're either going to sacrifice the rhythm, cadence, sing-songiness for accuracy, or you're going to sacrifice accuracy to maintain the sing-songy cadence of the original poem, because it just doesn't. I was going to dazzle you with the 2 or 3 words in Old English, but my brain froze up on me. But to try to say, I sing by the sea with Sally, but then try to say that and translate that directly to something in Latin, you just can't do it. You just can't do it, because you're going to sacrifice I'm repeating myself as usual. You're going to sacrifice the accuracy for the cadence of the poem. And that goes for the Havamal too. That's why some people like some versions better than others, because of what I just said twice. So I'm not going to say it again.
Right. So my next question for you was, are you closer to one or more of our gods than the others? And if so, I assume so at some point. How have your relationships with the Aesir changed over your long time in loyalty to them?
When I first come around, most people chose a patron, god or goddess. Full truery was a word often used. And oftentimes it was a god or goddess, one of the Aesir that they had a similar perceived personality to. Like big bear men would always be Thor's men, Horn dogs would always be Frey's men, and not to be disrespectful, but you guys get the picture. Young women in their prime would be Freya's women, that type of stuff. And I think when I first came around, I did feel a bit of a closeness to Lord Thor. And I think I'm not Thor or Thor-like character. I'm not a towering guy. They call me a gnome for a reason. I'm like 5'7" on a good day nowadays. I think I used to be 5'8.5" when I would join the army, but all that gear shrunk me. But because he was the everyman, he was the everyman. He was the farmer. There's the stories of him, the Midgard serpent in the ocean, and I grew up on the ocean, so those things spoke to me. And again, you got to have a patron type of deal was a big deal. So I felt close to Thor, Lord Thor, but. As the years went on, I learned more. I started to feel a pull, not away from Lord Thor, but a pull towards Lord Freyr. And as me and Lily bought the place in New Hampshire 20-something years ago, 24, 25 years ago, we did a lot of we kept sheep at one. We still keep chickens, but kept sheep. We'd get when we did swine bloat, we'd get the pig as early as possible, so it had weeks to spend here on the property, and we'd feed it and take care of it. So it would be part of the property to an extent before we were able to bloat it to the Aesir. And so I started to feel a pull towards Ing Frey. As well, but over the years that's I don't say faded, but it's back more to broadly Aesir. If I've got to say a special fondness for it would still be Lord Thor and Lord Frey, but having them be dominant isn't there as much as it may have been at one time in my life.
Okay, yeah. I figured your answer would be something like that. A lot of the people who are, serious about this and have been doing it long enough, they, especially the men, it's always first Thor, and then a different one of the Aesir, and now it's just all of them. So I definitely get that. Do you have specific daily rituals or devotionals to sort of keep you living Asatru?
I think my devotional is doing the AFA work, to be honest. I know some guys do the guys and girls do the hail the day, hail the sun. And I've never done that. My favorite type of praying, outside of bloat, is deeds. When I'm doing something with the Aesir in mind, those deeds to me are a type of prayer. Like I put Lily and I built we call it a bloat house. It's like a family chapel, right? Bloat house, 16 by 24. It's on blocks. I used chicken coop technology at the time. I'd love to tear it down and redo it because I'm embarrassed that the job I did at the time. I didn't really know a whole lot about building, and But we have a bloat house. We call it the bloat house. We call it Ingsley Hall. Ingfrey, Lay is like a grove, so Ings Grove Hall. And we'll have Stumble down there, and we built it in 2004. And a fun fact, not so fun, we almost tore it down before I joined the AFA because we were like, we don't use it. It's sitting here. We don't use it. And then joined the AFA, and it was like drinking an energy drink, you know. Not that I know how that feels, but you know, it just wow, it's alive again, you know. So I tore the steps off the front of it, and now I have a deck there. Not a huge deck. It's like 4x6, and then a few steps down with a railing, and I'm building an overhang on it. So it's got like a little foyer, a little bump out. But when I'm doing that, that's kind of one of my favorite types of prayer because I'm doing work for the ACER. And yeah, so that's kind of my big thing is doing AFA work, you know, being engaged because I know I'm advancing, hopefully I'm advancing the ACS fame and our folks' health by working for the AFA and just doing stuff, you know, like casting something in cement that's ACA related or whatever the feed is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So once again, you kind of anticipated my next question on accident. I think I was going to ask about your famous mead hall. You have up there. I don't know if that's the same thing as the bloat house. I know I've seen pictures of. Okay.
It is.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, can you tell me more about that? But I don't know if there is more to tell or just.
No, we've there's been a lot of we call it symbol, you know, and that's the thing about for people who might not know, Anglo-Saxon, Swedish, Danish, Gothic, Frankish, you know, it's all. I like to say it's all the same big religion. It's like the meat and potatoes are the same between every single one of them. But the Germans, they put mushrooms in their brown gravy. Oh, the English, they just put gravy with some baked beans on the side. The Swedes, they put a little bit of lutefish on it, you know. So, but it's all the terminology informs each other. Like there are times that we don't have a term in Old Norse, for example, but you might be able to find a cognate in Gothic or a cognate in Danish. So I like to bring that out there. Like, how do you reconcile being Anglo-Saxon in a Norse world, right? And it's as simple as that. It's the same religion. Odin, Woden, Wotan, you know, Thor, Thuna, Thunaraz. It's the same names, just different accents or different. You know, you say car, I say ka. It's the same word. It's the same thing, really, right? And I like to express that to people. And so back to what I was saying, how to be an Anglo-Saxon in the Norse world. It's easy. It's no harm when the Danes in England, when they settled, you know, they kept raiding and bigger, the Great Army and Alfred and all that stuff going on. If that's sparking an interest, definitely look that time period up. It's amazing. The rulers of England were, you know, Christian. The generic folk outside of the centers of power, be it a burg or a town where the king's men were, nominally Christian at best. So when the Danes were able to establish themselves in England and Alfred had to make peace with them, to stop raiding, you know, there's so many, and I can't give you a number, but so many of the English people, apostate, I don't know if that's the proper word, but they went back and started worshiping with the Danes who came in. And I know there was some, you know, forcing Guthrum to take a Christian, blah, blah, blah. We know that, but the regular guys. And so many people crossed back over or were able to worship again. But now they had that, I don't want to say institutional power again, but it was more there as opposed to what it was before. And one of the reasons I say that is Bishop Wolfgar, I think it was 1000s, I think he was writing. might have been 900s, well after the Danelaw was established. He's writing about, he's whining about the things that, the people, what the people are doing in English. And he specifically uses English language. He doesn't say, they're worshiping or they're praying to Valkyries. He uses the English term for Valkyries, which indicates the people there were the English people there had gone back to the old worship as well. So being an Anglo-Saxon in an Old Norse world in the Austrian Folk Assembly, it's easy. It's just easy. It's almost like you're allowed to be be yourself and express it more. And I feel that didn't come out right, but I think people get the drift to what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, for sure. There's also some evidence that when the Anglo-Saxons arrived in Britain and what would become England, that the Celts that did remain, the Britons, many of them were buried in an Asatru style, not a Christian style, meaning some of the Celts would have married into Saxon families and then began worshiping Odin, and presumably because it was, close enough to their Celtic paganism that they had already sort of started reverting to after the Romans left. And I mean, you can speculate on why. That may be the reason. It may have just been a social thing. It may have been different reasons for different regions of the soon-to-be kingdom. But yeah, it is interesting. I think people only have a hard time being some flavor of Germanic other than Old Norse, and have a hard time practicing Asatru as with Old Norse, the liturgical language, if they kind of warns us about keeping yourself awake at night and stopping yourself from achieving things. And as I mentioned, there you go. There's my bad paraphrasing of a Havamal stanza. But yeah, as far as something the law speaker said about how the Germanic people are related, I remember back in the Facebook days when I and the AFA were still out on Facebook, I had done a DNA test for the first time when I was like 19 or 20 or so, and I was like, oh look, I'm this much English and Dutch and German, a little bit of Swedish, whatever. And the law speaker commented on the post I made or whatever, and he was like, so island German, mainland German, swamp German, and way up north icy German. Got it. And like, that's silly, but that's reality. The Germanic people spread far and wide. Even the Celts themselves originally came from what's now Germanic lands.
Yeah.
Not that they would like to be called German, but yeah.
That's what some of the guys get too hung up on. I'm thinking Slavic. and they're not mocking those people. Well, the guys get too hung up on, I might mock a little bit, but I'm from Belarus. What do I have to do with Asatru? And if you've got if you want to get a connection beyond just being European men and women, the far-flung children of Europe, right? If you look anywhere in Europe, one of the many Germanic tribes during the wanderings passed through your area. So you may have to go back to 400 to find it, or 700 to find it. But the Visigoths went all over. Then they went to bringing Spain into the Vandals into North Africa, and then they got dispersed into Constantinople, and the Ostrogoths went down the east, and they made it into. They're the ones who kind of gave the death blow to Rome, and they were there forever. And then the Franks come down, Germanics. Franks come down from France, and they took out the Ostrogoths. But where do those people go? They don't just all evaporate. They're still there. The children are there. And then the Lombards come down, the Longbeards, the Winili, right? With Odin, who are these Longbeards? And Frigga says, oh, so you have named them, so you shall grant them victory. So they made it down to Italy, and the Lombardy is still northern Italy. And then the Lombards lasted as a kingdom in southern Italy till like the 1100s. And they were finally crushed by who? The Normans. So, and you can find pretty much what they still spoke, I think, a version of Gothic in the Crimea until the 1700s, 1800s. Chris would be able to tell us.
1700s, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Chris will know.
Yeah. So sure. if you want to, European is European, but if you're intent on finding a German connection, it's not hard to broadly find that by looking at our people's history, so.
Yeah, they call
what it's worth. Don't get hung up on that.
Right.
You're a European man or woman, you belong with us.
They call Scandinavia the womb of nations for a reason.
Yeah.
You look at any of the fathers or the great nations of Europe, they are either Germanic or they have a good bit of Germanic influence that made them that way.
Yeah. Or lineage to it somewhere. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're not wrong. Not wrong at all.
Lombard, Italy, Norman, Italy later on. I mean, Germanic. And then, of course, there's the Celtic underneath, which is just a cousin of the Germanic people. European is European, as you said. We got a good bit of questions because everybody was excited to have Ron on the show. So
all right, I'll try to make short answers.
All right, you do whatever you need to do. I took some PTO off work, so I don't need to be up early. Well, my son's going to be up early anyway, but, From Caleb, do you think defending Asatru on social media is a positive thing? Do you think people can be swayed through online discourse? What say you, Ron?
I say defending Asatru is always the right thing to do. How deep you need to go into it, unless you've got that talent or that stamina or that drive, man, that's hogwash. That's hogwash. Asatru isn't like that at all. Asatru is a family religion. That can be enough. But if you've got the energy to spend all night going back and forth in a reasonable fashion, you really do catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And I think being well spoken, being direct, being declarative, no wiggle room for them to kind of get a toehold on you. And if they're being jerks, let it go. There's no reason engaging. They're just trying to be trolls. So I think it's definitely worth doing. It's definitely worth doing, but only put as much energy into it as you want, unless you're that special guy who can go all day long about this type of stuff.
Right. Before I give my answer, we joked that Folkbuilder Chris Savage would hear this and come swooping in with the answer. He messaged me on Microsoft Teams to say that late 1700s in Crimea, there were still Gothic speakers. By the 1800s, no speakers could be found. So speak of the Savage. It's always positive to defend Asatru on social media. I would argue that if you are sincerely devoted to the ICER, it is a duty you have. And like Ron said, there's an extent. At some point, you're being trolled, or just you're not going to convince somebody, or whatever. And the Allfather himself says, never spend time wasting words arguing with a fool. And I did it again, have them all paraphrasing thing. But you get the idea. Yeah, absolutely. It's always good to defend our gods and our faith and our heritage.
If you guys are on X in the chat, if you guys are, or listen, if you're on X and you're not following Asatru Folk Assembly, please follow us. And when you see stuff you like that we put out there, which would be pretty much almost everything, definitely give it a like. That really helps our reach. That really does help our reach quite a bit. And it's one of our ways we're able to help our people, because coming to the AFA does demonstrably help people.
Absolutely. Do I think people can be swayed through online discourse? I don't think it happens as often as we like, but yes. I've seen it happen a few times, not nearly as much as I'd like, but it can happen. Another from Caleb. If someone is attending the services of a different religion but feel drawn to Asatru, can they join or attend AFA events? Is it common to receive inquiries from people currently identifying with a different faith but growing increasingly distant to it? For example, a Catholic feels drawn to Asatru but still attends Catholic Mass. So if you're still attending Catholic Mass, you cannot be a member of the AFA because one of the requirements of membership is that you be Asatru. But we have had Christians who are questioning their faith and they want to see what Asatru is like, and we let them be a guest and they can attend some things and not others. We do our background check because we do want any guest or member, things like that. So you could attend things, if you are a Christian that feels that the Abrahamic God is not for you, which, if you're eligible for AFA membership otherwise, then, he's not. So good on you. But yeah, shoot an email to gothar@runestone.org or submit an inquiry on any of the websites, things like that, and we'll figure something out for you. And we've had people that do that and they show up to we had someone go to Baldersoft, I think it was, and they decided okay, I was correct, questioning Christianity. This is where I need to be. And they stuck with us. We've had people do the opposite. Unfortunately, they'll, come to a HOF and then their Christian guilt will kind of kick in and they think, oh, I'm going to hell, Christian hell, for this. Jesus is going to be pretty upset. I better not do this ever again. And for what it's worth, they never have a reason other than Jesus will be upset before they go back. So I think that's still a point in our favor to an extent.
Yeah, but what's the worst? What's the worst that really happens for the Asatru Folk Assembly when these people ghost us? Somebody shows up, sees we're having a good time, a bunch of normal, healthy, happy, pious people. Where some of the ACA, at least it's good. At least it's a good bit of PR in some way. You never know what they say to somebody in 2 years. Oh yeah, I met those dudes. They're all right. You should go visit them if you're interested in that. You never know.
Yeah, I don't think we've had somebody show up and then decide to stick with Jeebus, but have awful things to say about us. Yeah. I know we've had people show up and they just cannot bridge the gap, I guess, to all the way to actually believing in or worshiping the ICR, and that's sad and that needs to be fixed, of course. But they say, oh my gosh, I just love the culture here. This is so much more devoted than my church, et cetera, et cetera. The people are great. I would love to get people's phone numbers and just be friends or whatever. That happens often enough that it's, there's something there, right? I think it certainly means something. And of course, that's by design. Even when they can't make their rational mind connect with the ICR, they still feel in here that this is where they belong. And they, like I said, they can't quite bridge that gap to something very deep and very, I don't know if primal is the right word, but you get what I mean. Something subconscious connects them to us. And
I would use that word too.
Man.
Yeah, I'd use that word too, primal.
A third question from Caleb, because he's trying to keep Ron up all night. If you had to take an educated guess, what is the ratio of people who join the AFA with belief in the ICR versus those who want to believe but don't just yet? As one of our star folk builders, Ron, what do you think?
Well, he asked my educated opinion, and that's not going to happen at all. But I would imagine from the time and service I've had here in the AFA, most people come in, at least in New England, in my experience, and what I see online and that sort of thing. Most people come in with a natural belief in the ACA first. With that said, their spouses, a lot of times I see the spouses having an interest, at least an interest because of their the person their affection is interested in. They have an interest as well, but when they come in and they see it happening in real life, those ones tend to come along too. So I would say most people join straight up off the street. They've already got a belief in the Aesir, and they want to worship the Aesir with us. But I would say spouses, significant others, that sort of thing. I see a lot that come on board after they see Asatru in action.
Yeah, I would. That's been my experience as well. My wife was like that. You know, she just was not a fan of Christianity in the conservative way rather than the liberal way, thankfully. And you know, when she saw I was very religious in something other than Christianity, she was like, "Well, I'll give that a try." And it took going to a couple of bloat, but here she is. So, and Githia Heather Young in South Carolina, she always says that Spekingr Daniel Young, her husband, he and their daughter started out going to Asatru things together at first because they were both interested in it. And Githia Heather was a little more apprehensive, but then like pulling out of the driveway of her first Asatru event, I think it was an AFA event. Yeah. Pulling out of the driveway of her first AFA event, she's already pulling up the application on her phone to join. So sometimes that's all it takes is, and the Alsferi says that probably every episode, sometimes multiple times an episode. That leap from the couch to the door is the hardest step you'll take, but it's also the most valuable. So yeah, I would say that's definitely, and we do have some members that become members and they like make it real clear. They're like, I don't know if I believe in this yet. I'm just giving it a shot, which I'm not knocking that, by the way, but that's becoming increasingly rare, and that's a good thing. Of course, the more you believe in the Aesir, the better, of course. I was kind of like that a little bit. I really wanted to believe, and I think Spekingr Eriksson was as well. We both kind of wanted to believe, and then we get to a bloat and we're like, okay, oh good, this is real. I wasn't being silly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it happens, but it's rare. Most of us seem to come here already believing or something very close to believing.
Yeah.
Which again, I'm very thankful for. I think it's really clear that the Aesir are with us and they're waking our folk up as quick as they can. A question from Celine specifically is for Spekingr Spawn, and Nick says he'll have the Alteragothi ask it next week, but we can answer too. She asks, is there a significance to Hel's dead side of her face being on the left and the living side on the right? I have a tattoo of her that is a mirror image of her by accident because at the time I didn't know any better. Now I'm very curious about it. Thanks. What do you think, Ron? I'm not aware of any reasoning for it.
No, I don't remember it being left and right. I thought it was upper and lower. I thought of like above the upper part of it was normalish, and the bottom part of it was more corpse-ish.
Like you said, normalish, the normal.
Yeah. normal dead lady, dead lady. I don't know. That's just seemed the way I can't. I don't know for certain, so I gotta wait for Spekingr's Fun myself. Unless you have
I don't know that. I don't want to say there's no significance to it. I would imagine there is if it was clearly denoted. I remember it being a left and right side of her face thing, but I genuinely cannot recall if that's something I read in the Eddas or if that's some kind of just popular characterization of her, sort of like that famous painting of Thor where he's blonde, where it felt right to the artist. I'm not sure, and I wish I had a better answer for you on that one, but I don't. Spekingr Spawn will, even if it's the same conclusion, he'll have a more roundabout and articulate way of getting there that'll be more enjoyable.
There's a book that Al Shagodi recommended to a few of us related to this. Ancient Ancestors Saw the Dead is seem to be the way we see dead with ghosts and stuff now. And you recommended this book. Can you read it? It's backwards, but it's like the return of the dead, God's ancestors, and the trying to read back a transparent veil of the pagan mind by some French dude, Claude Le Couteau.
Yeah.
So if this might help inform some of those things too, because they saw the dead as very different, not being separate from us, but not being alive like us in our sense, but they're very corporal too. So I mean, that might be an interesting book, Celine or whoever else is listening and into that. The guy uses quite a bit Old Norse.
There's also the oft recommended Road to Hell by H.R. Ellis Davidson.
Yeah, that it's been a long time since I've read that. That might be where that kind of mental picture of her being half. No, I'm pretty sure.
I know it is half and half vertically, like you go to Spekingr East, but I'm looking for the source. Bear with me. It might take me a while.
If you want to come back with that, we'll certainly welcome that.
Good question, Celine.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on to the next one, also from Celine. I have one more question that I almost forgot. Can we learn more about the Fae, like Fae? I know this question has been brought up a couple of times, but I'm still not quite understanding. All I have ever heard about them is that they are bad. My middle name is Faye, Faye, so it means something more personal to me. Thank you. I guess I'll give my thoughts real quick and then let Ron take a whack at it as well. As far as I can tell, if I had to put them in a Germanic context, it sounds like elves or Alfar or land whites, kind of in the way that our Saxon ancestors viewed the elves. There were elves like the Alfar, like the honored ancestors or kings or whatever, but there were also, well, they called them elves that were almost like malignant land whites, I think. I forget. There's a reference to something called elf shot among the Anglo-Saxon corpus of lore, and I forget what it is exactly, but it's some sort of like sickness related thing. And Ron may know better, which is why I'll pass the stick to him here in a minute. But yeah, if just my educated guess, as it were, is just that they're some flavor of Landvatir. What do you think, Ron?
I agree. I agree with what you're saying. I don't. The Fae, the Landvatir, they're not inherently good or inherently bad. They inherently are. And some of them can be more demanding if you're in their neighborhood, and some can be more, I'll say beneficial. It can be more easily swayed to help you. Like, I would put Ron, personally, I would put gnomes, tomtons, kobolds, all those things I would kind of lump under the generic term, the Fae, or saying land spirits. I think it's accurate, but it's not all-encompassing either. Landvatir, it's not all-encompassing either. I mean, you can say they're the Landvatir because they live in the land, or they live in that stone. But if you pass by that stone without leaving a penny, they might get ripped at you and cause your horse to get sick or go lame halfway to where you're going. But if you put that penny there, they may be able to they may be able to send some luck your way where that crow makes a racket in that shrub over there, and you look and you see a couple bandits. So I don't think they're inherently good or bad. And maybe some attached to families, like a failure, that sort of thing, may be more beneficial to your family, but I don't think they're inherently good or bad. It's kind of a gift for a gift. What you give them, they give back, in some sense. So I don't know if that answers your question, Celine. I hope it brought a little more clarity. Saying they're bad, I think it's just I think that's later Christian layering on tales to separate us from the land and separate us from the ancestors. Because if all these spooky things are bad, well, you're not going to want to go out. You're not going to want to go out on Hallows, or you're not going to want to go out and leave an offering for Yule. You're going to, like the Grimms talked about, the Brothers Grimm, the one you were all familiar with, but the Grimms put a great series, Teutonic religion, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 books, and they tore through all kinds of folklore in Germany, in surrounding areas in the 1800s, and they talk about the farmers even then were leaving the last sheaf or two of corn, and not American Indian corn, but corn is broadly wheat, grain. They would leave that standing for Sleipnir. So if you think all these things out there are evil and bad, you're not going to leave that sheaf of wheat or corn standing for Sleipnir. So you're severing that connection. You're severing that normal. Oh, you can't say "Hail Thor" when it thunders because that's evil, that's bad. Well, then you're bringing the Lord Thor out of your not daily, your frequent world mindset when you get the summer thunderstorm. So I think that saying that the Fae are bad, I think that's just it's I don't say propaganda, but it's a type of propaganda. It was a type of propaganda.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and like you said, are literally all of them good? No, probably not. Are literally all of them bad? Certainly not. And yeah, you mentioned the thing about you say "Hail Thor," and they're like, "No, don't do that." Similarly, they called Woden or Odin. I think it was the devil. They'd say he was the king of the barbarians. And I know a lot of us in these circles think barbarians are cool, so that doesn't have the same negative connotation it may have to our ancestors that looked back to a Greco-Roman past. But all these horrible things they would say about him, and the All-Father he has his fury, and he is a god of war, of course, but he's not the devil. But if you think he is and you believe in Jesus, well, then you're going to want to stay away, of course. And as you would if you truly believed in Jesus, right? So, yeah, a lot of these things are propaganda. It's often very thinly veiled, not very good propaganda, thankfully. So at least there's that. Let's see. Next question.
To butt in before you did that.
Okay.
So I found the source, but I also wanted to say also the Fae and the Vatir can sometimes be seen as like tricksy or playing tricks, stealing your keys, blah 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 blah. Sometimes I think it's just to remind you to pay the heck attention and take care of your surroundings a little bit better. So it's like gentle nudging. But also in regards to hell, it's specifically from and why did I just close out of that tab like an idiot? So it is from the Gylfaginning, or the Gylfaginning. I always mispronounce that. Chapter 34, when it's listing the children of the Kinslayer. The only thing it says though is she is half blue, black, and half flesh color, by which she is easily recognized and very lowering and fierce. That's really the only time it's mentioned in the lore. Her actual complexion. She says half blue, black, and half flesh colored. And I've never seen the top bottom thing that Rod's describing. That one's new to me. I just go left and right, but I've never actually paid attention to which side was which. I'm sure there's some left-hand path people concerned with thing that have a preference or a reasoning that they think. I don't know. Spekingr Spawn's super intuitive on that sort of thing. So let's hear him next week. Next week.
Yeah, absolutely. If it was written down that one side is one and the other side is the other, then there is a reason for it somewhere. We may not have access to it. That's always a possibility. But if it's specified, there's a reason for it. And if anybody knows, it'll be Spekingr Spawn. Though again, I apologize that we don't have the answer, but great question for what it's worth. Nick from New Hampshire. I was hoping to get a question from him.
I'm in trouble.
Maybe. He said, what's the story behind the black gnome?
Sir, it's called the Gnome of Color now.
That sounds
the guys I can rag on make some short, and they call me a gnome supremacy. But it's well taken and well intended, I think. But I do have a fondness for gnomes anyways. But there was a picture. I think it was winter nights, just past winter nights we had up here, and the group pics are all were all up there, and then it got posted on X, and this one random dude, actually, this ties into with engaging people on X. If the guy looks at the picture, and he goes, "Why do you guys have a black guy there?" And all shall go. He's like, "I have no idea who you're talking about." And Nick finds me and blows up the picture, and you can see I'm a little bit the inside of my. I'm in the sun all the time, so nice and light there. But then you go the other side, a little tanned. So I'm always tanned, and the older I get, the more permanent weathered I am. But so it was me. It was me, and the guy. So this guy thought I was black, and so they just started calling me a black gnome, and it spun off from there. They'll make memes about me, and I probably shouldn't explain too much more about that because I don't want to oh, you guys are mean, but they'll make fun of me and do these little AIs of me and as a little black dude in a gnome costume, and it is funny. These guys around here are clever, and but that guy, I kind of talked to him a little bit offline, and we didn't become besties or anything, but a guy who was kind of touchy, like, "Oh, what's that?" We kind of, there's no hatchet to bury, but we kind of buried the hatchet and left it on a good note. So definitely engage people if they call you a black gnome. And thanks, Nick.
Yeah, we get funny questions online, and camera angles can make really silly stuff happen. We had something like that. The lighting at Nordhoff used to be more yellow, I guess, and then someone took this picture of all of us sitting down to eat dinner at Disa Thing 2023, maybe 24, somewhere in there. So it's a big group of people, and one of our regular members, great guy, so he works on a boat, or he did at the time. So he was very tan. He was clearly white. He's like North German, right?
Yeah.
Very, very white, but he got tan from working on the boat, so he's kind of tan at this time. And he just has like medium to light brown hair, but this yellow lighting in the Hoff, which we've fixed since, and then just taken on an Android. I'm an Apple supremacist, but it was taken on an Android camera, not one of the good ones, not like the Google Pixel 6 million or whatever. It was, a Samsung something. And so it just, it really made him look like this tall black guy with like long dreads or something. It was such low quality. And people were saying, "Hey, you have this huge black guy right in the middle of this feast. What's that about?" And I had to, kind of like you did with your guy, I had to message him on the side and go, "That guy's not black." And I asked this member for permission before sharing a better picture of him with the guy. And he said it was fine. So I was like, "This is the same guy. You can see the resemblance. Here's him working on a boat, also being really tan. Here's him just at the Hoff in better lighting. He's white. He's just sunburnt to hell and back." But yeah,
Western hunter gatherer complexion.
Yeah, he's just got that old European style going on. Let's see. Got a couple donations I want to thank people for real quick. Ronald Blake donated $50 to our South Africa fund. Thank you very much. For those of you that don't know, we donate to a South African charity. The one we donate to now, I believe, helps feed families. I could be mistaken. There was one that helped them get fencing for their properties. But yeah, please, if you have money to spare, just burning a hole in your pocket in this economy somehow, please feel free to donate to our South African brothers and sisters. They need it. I know things aren't always great here in this part of the Anglosphere, but they're much worse for our folk in South Africa. Steven in Japan donated $10 to the Phrasehoff Fund and $5 to Baldershoff Steeple. Thank you very much. Both very important. Let me get back to the question there. So we got this little side chat thing where Nick logs all the questions and donations for us. I'm having to navigate it because I tried to prioritize the donations. I'm having to play backtrack.
Yeah, if I try to read it, I'll be up like this.
I almost have to, yeah. Apprentice Folkbuilder Jordan Wardrobe up in Canada asks, Ron, what makes someone an Anglo-Saxon? Is anyone of English descent an Anglo-Saxon?
Of course. The English blood, you're an Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah,
English comes from the Anglo part of Anglo-Saxon.
Mm-hmm.
England.
There's no like super nuanced answer we can give. The answer is just yes, but like we can explain it further and give, fellow Anglo-Saxons a reason to stick their chest out a bit, I guess. So yeah, there's been a few recent DNA studies that show that Tom Rouse, the guy from Survive the Jive, put it best in a talk he did a few years ago. So the modern ethnic English are not as Germanic as Hengist and Horsa and their men stepping off the boat. We're about 85-ish% as Germanic as they were. But we are 100% as Germanic and Saxon as the time period of like Alfred the Great, the middle to late Saxon period. So when you think of the Anglo-Saxons, you tend to think of them being already settled in what would become England. We are as Anglo-Saxon as them. There was I mentioned the DNA studies. One of the more recent ones that came out, they said the modern English are kind of a three-way split between, with most of the DNA, it depends regionally, but most of the DNA in most regions being from like the Anglo-Saxons, northern Germany, southern Denmark, right? And then the next bit being from what they thought was French, and that's kind of correct, but it's sort of a Frankish, so Germanic, like northern French, Frankish, and like Belgian, or Belgic at the time, tribes. And then the last bit, and depending on the region, like Cornwall or something, it's going to be reversed, but the last bit being the Celtic Britons, the natives of the British Isles. And that admixture is what the Anglo-Saxon era of Englishmen were, and what the current ethnic Englishmen are. And again, it varies by region, and I encourage you to do some digging if you're English and look into what regions your people are from, because it's very fascinating.
Yeah, and you can't forget the Norman influence, because the Normans, when they come over, they pretty much evicted all the majority of the English royalty, and the Normans were just what? They were Danes who settled in northern France, and the French king, probably Louis at the time, said, "Please settle here, but stop raiding us. You can have all this land, but don't let any other Vikings come down." And then the Danes, who settled the Danelaw, the eastern part of England. So you got who were more Germans too, more Germanics too, and which is interesting. I don't want to go off. I got all this knowledge of useless stuff, but South America in the South was settled by more southwestern England, right? The Mercia, London, South. New England, the two great thrusts of settlement in America, really, in the English settlement. And the North was settled north and east of London, York and the East Anglia, which would be the old Danelaw. So the theory goes, or the saying goes, is that's the root, or that's the focal point, the beginning of the northern in America, the North and South accent difference, because South and West never got settled by the Danes. They were still primarily, West Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Saxon, while North and East, to settle New England, had that Danish influence, which would affect the accent and some of the language used. And that was they say that's what the big split with the American accent is between the North and the South, which I find very interesting. It's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd never heard that.
Why do we talk to them when you guys talk funny? Well, that's why.
Blame the Vikings and the
Yeah.
the Northerners in England. That makes sense. As one might be able to deduce from my very clever surname, my ancestors came from Eastern England, Kent, Essex, a little bit of Buckinghamshire, and we came to Virginia initially, and then kind of moved south and west, just depending on the branch of the family. What about you, Ron? Where are yours? Your
North
from?
and east. Oxfordshire. I know Oxfordshire. I know generally it is north and east because we come over I got 13 Mayflower ancestors.
Oh wow!
But the Boardmans come over in the mid 1630s. There was a big, they call the Winthrop fleet, like 3,000 English families come over all within a couple of years. We come over then and we settled in Ipswich, Mass, north of Boston, and we stayed there and back and forth between New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and Oxfordshire. And I used to know the name of one of the towns. There's a cool tower in it, but I can't remember the specific towns anymore. But it's mostly north and east of England,
Yeah, you mentioned Ipswich. That's an East Anglian town, so it sounds like they probably came from East Anglia, at least that specific family. And
what's cool is if you look at a map, Anglo-Saxon supremacy night. Sorry, everybody, but if you look at a map of Boston and of London, you look not all of them and not in the exact order, but you look north and east of London, you see towns like Beverly, Kings Lynn, Ipswich. Essex is East Saxons, but then you go down to Boston and you follow the coastline up, you see Ipswich, Beverly. Well, they don't call it Kings Lynn, just regular Lynn. So you see a lot of the same correlating town names northeast of London, northeast of Boston as well, and that just helps indicate that's where we come from. This is my neck of the woods.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't know until recently, and I found out through my own family tree deep diving. Boston is a town in Lincolnshire, or city, probably kind of port area. Until Boston port a generation before leaving, and I don't know what caused them to move up there, but I know they left right around the time a bisexual Scotsman became King of England. I guess they were like, we're out of here. So, apprentice folk builder Angela Garisi says, not a question, but just wanted to thank Ron and Lily for opening their home to fellow AFA members. They're such wonderful folk. I agree. I've met them a couple times in person. Always awesome. For what it's worth, Angela is also really awesome.
She's very cool.
Inside baseball, I guess, to a lot of the stuff we do to keep like admin type things on among the AFA running is we do what's called ops calls, like operations. Just doing things like sending out flyers for moots and emailing folks about what's going on in their area, things like that. We do that pretty much every night at 8 p.m. Eastern, and I run it on Friday nights. And every time I'm running it, Angela's always there, always being super helpful and making us laugh a little bit while we toil away. So yeah, big fan.
It's funny is the other month we went down to Ipswich. I was talking about Ipswich. There was a meadery down there, so a few of us went down there. It was crummy out, rainy, but we had a good time. And we're gonna go grab something to eat afterwards. And we said we're gonna go found a place. And I grew up not too far from there, and Angela grew up not too far from there, and another dude, Robbie. Hey, Robbie. He grew up not too far from there, and then we had a transplant from Texas, and my wife from Western Mass. But anyway, so we said, oh, there's a clam shack. We get fried clams called Woodman's, and it's like, oh my gosh, let's go there. I used to go there with my family growing up, my grandparents, my parents, and then Angel used to go there with her parents and stuff, and Robbie, the other guy, used to go there with his parents when he was a kid.
Oh, wow.
Me and Lily, when we were first dating, we used to go there a lot with my family, and so it was just really, and you'll find this type of thing in the AFA where you just come together in these serendipity, the right word? Like all of a sudden, oh, let's just go get clams, and we all happen to have this connection to this one place. So it was binding too to be able to go share these shared stories that aren't really connected outside of and it's kind of cool. And Angela's got a lot of old New England in her too, and I know she gets Swedish and stuff, but Yeah, it's good sharing time with her. She's a good egg, very dedicated.
Well, clams are disgusting. I'm glad you guys had a good time
Have you had
regardless.
fried clams though?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I'd be willing to try it.
bread them and fry them. Good stuff.
Let's see. Robert E. Bailey says, do you consider the Eddas the Asatru Bible or as a documentation of our lore and religion? I would say the closest thing we have to a Bible, I guess. The cop-out answer would be to say any lore we have at all, but no, I would say the Gylfaginning is kind of the best laying out of all of our lore in most compact way, I guess. Some people would say the Poetic Edda is the closest thing we have to a Bible, which I get that. I understand why they say that. I don't disagree per se. What do you think, Ron?
I think they're important religious texts, but I wouldn't say a Bible. I wouldn't say a Bible. They're very important in the sense that they give a lot of advice. They tell tales of a holy Aesir, but that's, if you could make an Asatru Bible, those would be included as chapters in it. But there's so much other lore that's relevant that helps inform Asatru today that you'd have to include. So I don't, but I would say it would be part of a Bible. It's hard to compare. We don't have a Bible. I mean, so much of what we do is just in our tradition through blood and worship but the Eddas, I think, would definitely be in some greater compilation that would, how to be an Asatru, that would be part of it. And there's so much more. If you're looking for something like that, go over to runestone.org and in the library tab, the True Logs Mall, read that True Logs Mall. That's got so much good information in there, and still not a Bible, but is so much good. It's a great primer for Asatru, and dip into that if you haven't seen it yet, everybody. It's really worth looking at.
Yeah, if you're an older member, and I mean older in the sense that you've been around in the AFA specifically a while, not long in the tooth per se. One of the things that the old Runestone website used to have was something called an Asatru primer, and it might still be there. I don't know, but I don't think it is. But it had stuff like the Declaration of Purpose and all of that, and just kind of an introductory writing that our founder Stephen McNallen had done, and that was one of the things that hooked me in. But the True Mall is that, but much better. And it is, as Ron said, it's like the ultimate Asatru primer. Let's see. Next. Oh, okay. Angela donated $25 each to the Pavilion and the Steeple at Baldershoff, and $50 to Phrasehoff. Thank you, Angela.
All right, Angela.
Next question is from VLHLL8. If you feel you're in a spiritual rut, what's the best course of action? What say you, Ron?
I'd say two things. Bloat, right? You don't have to do anything fancy, but bloat, have a meal, have a second plate for the Aesir, toast the Aesir, bloat. I guess the big thing, do something. And the second part of it, which is related to the first, see other Asatru men and women. Get together with your folk. Get together with your folk and bloat together. Even if it's nothing fancy about going out to dinner and hey, Loden, clink, cheers. It's do something. Get together with other Asatru and do something.
Yeah, and when you're waiting for the scheduled day of the event, we're going to go meet up with the other Asatru and do something. I recommend rereading the lore. Reread through the Gylfaginning, the Poetic Edda, the Voluspa, the Havamal. I've done that in the past. I thankfully have not been in that rut in quite a while. But the last time I read through the Havamal, and I thought, okay, well, this is why I'm here. And that's not even one of the more, I guess, spiritually significant texts. That's almost more cultural in a lot of ways, and like worldview related. But just reading through that again and kind of, I'm about to paraphrase another stanza, but the bit about, the path to a friend's home is always feels short. You know what I mean? Just even the little things like that really reminded me, like, this is why I'm here. This is great. This is what matters. Things like that. But yeah, ideally, so there's your roadmap. Yes, schedule or figure out a hop to go to, a holy tide, an event, a day of remembrance dinner, or just meeting up for coffee with your folk builder or another member or Gothi or whatever. And then after you've scheduled that, sit down and just reread the lore. And it sounds so mundane, of course, but it'll make a difference. And if that doesn't on its own, meeting up with folk absolutely will. But I think you'd be surprised.
I think reading the law is a definitely good thing too. And don't get, not you, sir, but in general, people don't get stuck on the law being the prose editor, the poetic editor. There's Beowulf, there's brain cramp. There's the Joms Viking saga. There's the Eyebrigger saga. The Eyebrigger is awesome. That's has a lot about ghosts. They even have like a ghost seal. Like they have a ghost seal in there. And the guy has to hit it with a hammer to drive it out of the house. And I was rereading Niall saga, Burnt Niall saga, after not reading it for years. And I'm reading, and things go okay. Then they're burning Niall in his house, but there's also other family members / kinsmen retainers there too, and they're trying to escape. Right, the house is burning, the rafters are coming down. There's one rafter leaning up. Ooh, watch out, cat! So, cat, there's a rafter burning that falls down in the house, and the thatch is burning, and one of the guys says, "You get out, go, shit!" And the guy runs up the rafter and escapes out into the hillside, and another guy is getting ready to run up, and the rafter breaks on him, and everybody dies. But the guy who lived, I don't know, Tigvir, I don't know what his name was. I can't remember, but let's call him Tigvir. Tigvir starts talking, he tells people what happened. So now everybody's mad at the people burnt Niall in the house because Niall was a pretty popular guy. So, but Tigvir, he cannot stop talking about the event, about the burning in the house and the slaying. No, he can't sleep. That's all he can talk about. That's all he can think about. And it just struck me like a lightning bolt that he's talking about PTSD. So you're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder from a tale, I think it was written in the 1200s, 11, 12, 1300s. So here it is, 800-900 years later, and we've got a primary source, like we call them, right? A primary source talking about PTSD. He doesn't call it PTSD, but that's classic PTSD, So what I'm saying is these things in the lore can be very, very relevant to us today. How many guys who are in the service who's got some form of PTSD? How many do you know have been in like a car accident, a traumatic car accident, got PTSD from that? So these are things that, I'm not so different. I'm not so weird. I'm not so strange. I'm not so ununderstandable because I have these things keep turning over my head, this PTSD. We've been dealing with this for 1,000 years, if probably more. So read the lore and do a Google search or whatever you use, chat, GPT, whatever, AI, whatever, and you may find something in the lore that actually speaks to your specific spiritual malay.
Yeah, absolutely. There might be specific stories that just strike you. There might be ones that they might all strike you. I don't know. But yeah, definitely follow that roadmap. Next question is from Monterey. It depends on your pronunciation, I guess. Monterey Goodnight 2207. Can you bring spouses to events if you remember? Yes, provided that your spouse is, like the rest of us. just let the person running the event know. But yeah, absolutely. Again, provided that your spouse is eligible for AFA membership, which if he or she is not, then you are also not. So I presume she's eligible for membership.
Yeah, I would say most hosters and hosts. I would say we encourage bringing family, eligible family members.
Absolutely. I mean, like we kind of discussed before, lots of times the husband and maybe even the kids will come to an AFA event first, and then they'll go, okay, we got to get the wife and mom to join us, and she'll be encouraged to show up, and she might be a little nervous at first, but then ends up having a great time, and then that woman, usually joins the other women and encouraging the next member's spouse to join. So it's a great thing to see. Absolutely. Please bring your husband or wife. I can't tell the gender of the person based on the comment, but yeah. Question from Connor Odinson. Is it even possible for someone who chooses a foreign creed, even capable of getting into that creed's afterlife? Example, could a white devoted Christian get into the Christian heaven? That's a great question, and one that people kind of moving from Christianity back to their native faith of Asatru ask a lot. So yeah, thank you for asking that just first. The answer is no. So the biggest, you listed what would be the biggest example, the most common one that gets asked, is somebody might say, well, my grandma was a devout Methodist. She, died holding a crucifix with the little dead guy on it, etc. Is she stuck in Christian heaven? No, because the Jewish God does not hold sway over our souls. I assume he has sway over Semitic souls, and that's fine for them. I don't even know if that's the case. I just know he does not have ours. Our souls return, pieces of our souls return to be with our ancestors if they accept us, which I think you have to look at it this way too in a modern context. As white people, so many of our ancestors were Christian, or at least nominally Christian. And they did that because they didn't know any better most times. And they would have been devoutly Christian because they genuinely believed it was the right thing to do. And they were probably excellent people outside of that choice, or in spite of that choice rather. And so their ancestors, who would have been Asatru, surely would be understanding and saying, okay, you were tricked into this foreign faith just as all of our people were past a certain point. Of course, but you lived a great life. Of course, we'll let you join us here. And, I don't know if those of us that broke the cycle of Christianity in our line and became Asatru again, when we return to that other side of the veil, I don't know if we'll get some kind of special welcome, but I know that, or I'm confident at least, that our ancestors will be happy to see us. Got a little far afield there, but yeah, no, a white devoted Christian who is a good person is not going to go to Christian anywhere, heaven or hell. If they were an especially bad person, worthy of being in Naustrand, they'll go to Naustrand, Asatru or not. If they were an especially good person, they will. I would assume, I can't speak for the ICR, of course, but they're likely to just rejoin the ancestors. What do you think, Ron?
I agree. I agree. At one time, years ago, I would have said that your afterlife is dictated by who you choose to follow. Like in America, you follow American laws. In Russia, you follow Russian laws. In Morocco, you follow Moroccan laws. Likewise, if you were a Christian, you would go to the Christian afterlife. If you're Asatru, you go Asatru afterlife. And don't forget, when we talk about the afterlife for Asatru, you're not talking about, everyone gets to go sit at, Thor's Bilskirnir, Thor's Hall, or Valhalla. generally, the common thought is that you go to the halls of the ancestors. That's a pretty common. So, but I don't have that old thought anymore over the years, and I think that this is due in part to some conversation with Spekingr Erickson on the side things. That he's given me a few eye-opening comments that kind of changed my longer view within Asatru. But no, I agree with you saying. I mean, we're inseparable. We are the European folk. We are inseparable from our gods, period. And we're inseparable. You don't have a choice. You die. You go see that. However it happens, whatever it looks like, I'll tell you when I get there. You're gonna see them. There's no way any of those guys have any sway over us because they're not of us, and we're not of them. So I agree with what you said.
Yeah, I always I tend to hail my granny East at Sumble, just because I was really close with her growing up, and I always, not that I'm in any hurry to die, of course. I've got a lot of life left to live, a lot of Christians to piss off on Twitter and such, but I always say I'm excited to see my granny and joke with her, because she was a very devout Southern Baptist, because we're in Georgia, so of course I look forward to getting over there and teasing her about being wrong, and I don't know if corporeal form is a thing on the other side, but if it is, she's gonna give me a good smack in the head probably, but it'll be worth it.
That's a Southern hug, right?
Yeah, she was
So we're joking over here in this folk builders chat. Which one of you has the smoke alarm battery going off? Because there's been beeping in the background for like an hour. Sounds like a forklift going. A forklift.
Maybe I am a black gnome.
I don't know. I can barely hear it, but it is there. It's kind of funny.
Okay.
I'm just laughing because it's real. It's real bugging.
We just got ours rewired. It might be ours.
It's not a smoke alarm. I don't know what it is, but it's just if you don't hear it, then it's probably our imagination. But multiple of us hear it.
Well, I mean, Ron, you're a black gnome. Maybe you're just not hearing it.
It might. It's either that or the tinnitus. But my wife don't hear it either. It's still going on.
I heard a random beep, but I think it came from the...
I don't hear it right this second, but we definitely hear it. It might also be just some strange feedback between your mics. I don't know.
Oh, it doesn't
sound like normal feedback, so I don't know.
It's probably our assigned FBI agents.
Yeah, probably. Bob, quit listening in, you dirty rat.
I'm in my son's nursery, if you can't tell from the stuffed animals behind me in the crib and all that. And he's got lots of toys with like dying batteries that I need to replace. I bet it's that, if I had to guess. The smoke alarm thing is funny though. Let's see. Question from Isaac ITS or 1TS. He says, is there a good Norse equivalent to Celtic Samhain? And for those listening, it is not Samhain, it is Samhain. Yes, so two kind of. The main one that would fit the best seasonally, of course, is Veternater or Winter Nights, and that one's pretty much the closest we get to a one-for-one comparison with Samhain, I would say. I'm not super knowledgeable on Gaelic stuff, but it is fascinating, and Samhain most closely resembles Winter Nights, and they very clearly share the same greater, further back European root. So of course at Winter Nights we honor our ancestors, special emphasis on the DC or our female ancestors, but we also honor the male ancestors, the Alfar as well. What do you have any insight on that, Ron, as well as information on Samhain?
Winter Nights is our closest parallel. The English would celebrate Hallows as an independent thing that got glommed together with Samhain. So the Germanic Anglo-Saxons would celebrate Hallows, and they would go guising, wear masks and stuff, and very similar to what the Celts did with Samhain. I want to say there's something else about that. something about the Celts had the masking and that sort of thing more as a fear of the dead, while the English, it wasn't a fear. Dang it, I wish I remember. I can't remember the details, but there was, the outward expression was very similar, but some of the details of what it was, the Anglo-Saxon was more celebratory as opposed to the Celtic fear. In a, wherever I heard that may have been wrong. I don't know. I wasn't there, but I got that. But I did also want to say, between winter nights in the old days, Yule would be a great time for ghost stories. Think of Christmas Carol, Ebenezer Scrooge, right? The ghost. So Ron calls it, this isn't an AFA thing, but Ron calls from winter nights to Yule. I kind of call that the season of the dead. You know, that's when the Wild Hunt is about too, in that time period. None of our holidays are a singular thing, in the sense that we don't celebrate X holiday and only on this date is why it's holy. We call it tides, like Yule tide, Easter tide. So it's days leading up and days leading out, like the tide. The tide comes in, the tide goes out. So there may be the height of the tide. Yule is pretty much, when the solstice is. But the days preceding and the days coming after are still part of that tide. So so I call the winter nights to Yule. That's kind of the season of the dead, where it's a lot of holidays recognizing the dark time of the year and when as they say, the veil is thinnest. I'm sure you guys have all heard that sort of thing.
For clarification on the beeping, Madison's watching VNS in the other room. She said it is definitely one of my son's toys somewhere in here. Sounds like hospital equipment, so that's eerie. But the other holy tide that's close to Samhain, and so, like, to be clear, winter nights is like the equivalent. But Yule, as Ron mentioned, I didn't even think of that one, but I was going to say Nornanacht or Hexanacht, or some people call it Walpurgisnacht. It's kind of one of those, to put it in like more modern, kind of lame terms, but just bear with me. It's like that spooky girl magic stuff. So that's similar to that sort of Samhain, Halloween, thinning of the idea of thinning of the veil, I suppose. The veil is thinnest during the time of the Wild Hunt and the wintry months, but in Nornanacht, there's still kind of a focus on that side of things. Another donation from Nahoa in Arizona, donated $5 to Njordsoft. Thank you. And Odinsoft, $10 to Sigerheim, $15 to Balder Steeple, and also bought a couple of Hoff pins. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Every little bit counts. I know that's a cliche. There's that toy again.
Pennies add up to pounds.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how we've been able to achieve all that we have so far. It's just from little donations and things like that, as well as big donations, of course, but mostly little donations from members, just giving us what they can so we can continue to build and make things brighter for both our gods and our descendants. That is all we have for questions. Do you have any last thoughts you want to put out there, Ron?
I got 1,000 thoughts. I don't want to go too late, but I wanted to mention a couple other bits of lore that may be kind of interesting for people to look at that you don't really hear too much about. There's so many things out there. And I'm going to try not to be Anglo-specific, but I will be. There's something called the Durham precepts, Durham verses, and it's old Anglo-Saxon stuff, and it parallels the Havamal in so many ways. It's more advice to people. And there's so many things. There's also something called Maxims 1 and Maxims 2. I mean, in Maxims 1, they even talk about 1 or 2. I'm sorry, I can't remember which. There's even a line there that Woden fashioned idols, and Christ did victory, or something like that. So there's a lot of snippets in there. There's something about Solomon and Jupiter, I think, which is another Old English thing where they talk about. I think they say Jupiter invented runes, and Jupiter's there's a word for it where you Latinize Germanic names, but Jupiter could have been an equivalent for Odin at the time too. So there's a lot of those things out there. There's the Meyersburg charms, if I'm remembering rightly. It's there's 2 of them. One of them talks about Odin and Balder going on a horse ride out in the woods, and Balder's horse breaks a ankle, a forelock, and then I think Frigga and Fulla, her sister, come, and others come, and they do a spell on the horse's hoof, well, ankle, the leg to blood to blood, bone to bone, flesh to flesh heal. So I've said this a few times, don't get siloed in Anglo-Saxon. Don't get siloed in Norse. Don't get siloed in Gothic. They take the Norse expression is the best in what we go with, but use all these other things to inform things. Like the Heimskringla is great for Sumbul, but Beowulf is great for Sumbul too, and it really informs all these things. So there's a lot of stuff out there that you're going to get a lot of. I think you're going to get a lot of use out of if you're interested. I also wanted to say for the holidays, don't just decorate for Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day and stuff. Do stuff like this too at home. Make a maypole, right? It's just a dowel and a little thing from Michael's or whatever, and some things. Make a little maypole. Put that up a week or 2 before Summermal, May Day. Put that out. Make a old Swedish like midsummer stang, the midsummer pole that the Swedes do. Immerse yourself in Asatru, because we're a religion, but it's tied into our people, but it's tied into our culture too. So these are also cultural expressions that help reinforce the spiritual, the religious aspect. They're kind of inseparable. So depending on how crafty you are or motivated you are, you can find stuff online maybe. But also don't be that guy who has like everything in your room is Thor, and don't be that guy either where it's just like one big like, whoa, what's going on here? Don't do that. But immerse yourself in traditional things and in cultural things of our people. Even I'm not Swedish, my wife's part Swedish, but we have these things to help ground you in our history, in our people's history. Like, so do that sort of thing as well. Don't just for Yule, do the Yule buck, the Yule goat, the straw Yule goat as well. For Freyfax, if you can't get to a house, go ahead and make yourself a bread horse. And if you can't fashion a horse, make yourself a loaf of zucchini bread and call it a horse. It's not wrong, but still have that be something. We make corn dollies up here, which is weaving of wheat and stuff like that into shapes. Yeah, and those are some of the other things I wanted to throw out there. I mean, Asatru is about life. It's a forward facing. It's about life, and we're grounded in the past, but we're moving forward and pass it on. These are the fun things that kids love. If you got kids, these are the fun things that kids like to do. Grandkids, nephews, nieces, do those type of things. Asatru's alive. Help keep it alive by doing these things, not just bloat, although that's probably the main thing we do, the gift exchange, the gift cycle, but do all these other little things too.
Yeah. There's kind of this modern thing where people will say, I'm going to let my kids choose what religion they are. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
And, and then the response to what I'm about to say is always like, well, whatever you push them to do, they'll do the opposite, which is not always true.
It's not true.
But,
if you're a jerk about it, they will. But if you're just a regular loving parent,
yeah, as long as you're not a jerk and as long as you're not just like objectively wrong. Both my parents are, vote Democrat, and I'm, here. So not that they're jerks, they're just wrong about some stuff. Anyway, yeah, it's like my son he's only 15 months old, so he doesn't really care too much. But like when we go to a holy tide, I make
Speaks
him
old English and modern English already.
yeah. But I make him wear his Thor's hammer. I make him dress nice at the Hoff. He sits in bloat and stumble. He freaks out at bloat a little if it's a loud one, but he sits in it as long as he can without disturbing everybody else. And that's how we're planning to raise him. And you should raise your children that way too. This is their birthright, and you have an obligation to give that to them. You have an obligation as a white person who is Asatru to give that birthright, that gift to all other white people, but especially to your children or your nieces or nephews if you're a very involved uncle, or if you're a grandparent in charge of your grandkids, whatever. It's our duty to proselytize a little bit. I know it's a dirty word. I don't even like saying it, but it just is what it is. We did have one more.
I'd like a better way of saying it, but it's true. If you don't push your beliefs on your kids, somebody else will.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I wish I'm sure there's a more gentle adult way of saying that, but that's 100% true.
That's probably the most cut and dry you can get. Yeah, I would, if you don't teach them this,
That's where furries come from.
We can all see the way the winds tend to blow culturally, and I think they're changing now, but currently they're still blowing a certain way, so we all know how that will end up. Michael Hollis asks, do y'all have any insight on the cultural and religious significance of the bear in relation to Asatru, aside from berserkers? There is a decent amount of evidence that the bear was sort of the Northern European equivalent of the lion. And I wish I had a cool, more detailed answer to that. There is a book that the Alshergothi and I think producer Nick have both recommended. Feel free to throw that up. Yep, here we go.
Yep.
Good job. The Bear, History of a Fallen King by Michael Pastoreau. I need to pick that book up myself. Actually, I read an excerpt of it online, and I thought it was cool, and I've been meaning to buy the book for like a year, and I haven't yet, so I'll get on that. You should too. Yeah, the bear was our version of the lion. And lions are cool. It's kind of a Southern European thing, and Southern Europeans are still Europeans, as long as you don't cross into certain parts of Sicily, I reckon. So, yeah. That's
the Thorbjorn, I think, is still a pretty common name in Scandinavia. Thorbjorn and Thorbear. Well, that makes sense. So, yeah, I don't have much else. I was going to recommend that same book that Spekingr East recommended. Thanks, Nick, for getting that up. But
yeah, all right. That was for real our last question this time. I'm gonna check the chat myself. Xavier Chipwood left a comment that is really, he said you should pass down your culture. Obviously, it's not even preaching. Yeah, exactly. It's everybody else does, and they should. So should we. It just kind of comes back to that sort of, I say age-old adage, but really it's kind of a mid-2010s thing that's just become more relevant. Other people do it. White people should do it too. That's pretty much it. So with that, thank you guys for being here. Please go watch or listen to the Alshergothi's interview with Mark Collette of Patriotic Alternative. Everybody says he did a good job, which he always does, so I assume that would be the case. But go listen to it anyway, rather than just assuming it was good. Pretend you don't know and you got to go find out. Go listen to that. Please like and share this so we can get more eyes on this and more people joining us and bringing glory to the Aesir and restoring our folk to greatness. Thank you so much, Ron, for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for the privilege.
One of our very best folk builders, and we have a lot of great folk builders, so it's hard to choose, I guess, but you're definitely one of the top dogs, and I appreciate you, and the AFA appreciates you.
I can only do it because of all the structure in place, the format of the AFA. It's no man's an island, right? And when we're atomized, we fail. But working within the AFA is just, it's been amazing. I've got great folk builders alongside of me, great folk builders in Goldar and above me, and gosh, just our rank and file, just tremendous people who are in it for the right reason, and it makes doing this easy.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a great time to be Asatru, and we're just going to keep working on it till the next time to be Asatru is even better. With that, yeah, thank you all for being here. Hail the ICER, hail the folk, hail the AFA. Never forget, victory never sleeps. Good night, y'all.
Hail.